The Internal Comms Procast is sponsored by Circle. Circle takes the guesswork out of your communications. Circle automatically personalizes your staff newsletter, website, and intranet using the content you're already creating. Circle's insights will tell you what content your staff are engaging with and what they could do without. Get real engagement insights for your entire organization at the click of a button. Learn more at circle.com. That's CERKL.com. Circle, weird spelling, awesome engagement. Welcome to the Internal Comms Procast. I am your host, Barry Williams. Every quarter, thousands of communicators embark on the arduous process of planning their internal communications. Some like to do it digitally, some take pen to paper, but most struggle against finding the right, measurable objectives to help with business goals. There is no such thing as the perfect planning process for every organization. You're an individual with strengths, weaknesses, and preferences. Back in July of 2018, we hosted our first ever Internal Comms Pro Retreat in Greater Cincinnati. Our guests this week helped kick off the retreat by sharing their best internal communications planning practices. They each take a different approach to this complicated work. Our first planning pro has been a communicator in a large organization for nearly 2 decades, but has been working in the internal space for 5 years.
I am Paola Cappellari, and I am with IMED Vision Care, and I'm responsible for internal communications as well as marketing programs for private health exchanges.
Paola is an active member of the Cincinnati chapter of the International Association of Business Communicators, or IABC. For her, the biggest challenge facing internal communicators today is knowing and selling their worth.
So I think that internal communicators all over the world are still constantly trying to prove their value to the organization. Unfortunately, I think that we're still doing this because internal communication seems like such a soft sell. It's really hard to prove the worth of internal comm work with tangible numbers, but I do think it can be done.
Paola is a thoughtful, measured planner who is adept at balancing audience benefit with organizational goals. Let's walk through her process. For Paola, the internal communications planning process begins with a goal check-in with leaders. This makes sure her plans are in sync with theirs and helps avoid stumbling blocks down the road.
In my experience, I think you get better results and buy-in if you start with getting leadership input first. Like, what do they want to see? What do they like? What do they think their pain points are? And anything in between. So I feel very passionate about ensuring that you're really getting that buy-in from the top.
Paola says her next stop is considering and understanding her audience. Who they are, where they are, what they care about, and how they prefer to receive their messages.
So first, what I like to do is I like to gather some demographic type of information, like what type of audience are you trying to communicate to? Where are the audiences located? That's super important if you've got lots of facilities or if you've got remote employees or sales folks that are out in their markets. And then also, what limitations does each audience have technology-wise?
After her audience is set and understood, Paola says she begins to think about what measurable goals the audience is trying to achieve and how her plan and work can help.
So once I've done that demographic analysis, then I like to start asking questions about metrics that they're trying to achieve. So like a few examples, across many industries would be something like, are you trying to reduce workplace injury and by how much? So maybe by doing a campaign, can you track the reduction in injury in the next 3 months, 6 months, or a year? Or are you trying to increase sales in a certain segment? What messaging hierarchy or marketing campaign can you help put in place that can directly correlate to an increase in sales? Or can you even cite a recent campaign for the reason why your company was able to convert a larger percentage of leads into customers? So I think it just depends on your industry, but you can always start by asking those general demographic type questions and then digging into what they're really trying to achieve. I think you always have to start with that idea of what's in it for me, because that's everybody's kind of trigger question. I think what trips people up is launching into a program that has not involved input from that intended audience before it's being introduced. So involving your audience from the onset makes them feel more valued, and I think it makes them more likely to buy into the plan and ultimately absorb the information that you want them to internalize.
When you are tackling a large, multi-level project like an internal comms plan, some communicators like to engage a project management tool like Basecamp, Trello, Airtable, or Monday to help them make assignments and keep track of tasks. But Paola warns that the administration of these tools can sometimes keep you from the work itself.
Too caught up in the administrative portion of all these project management tools, you could spend hours every week going in there and managing the projects and the workflow and making sure you've checked that you've completed something or where you are in your status, when really you just need to be working the project.
When it comes time to get the plan down in a distributable form, Paola says everything she needs is included in the Microsoft Office suite.
I am not really a fancy Nancy, I would say, when it comes to tools, because I don't really believe that you need anything beyond the Microsoft Office suite to create an excellent plan. So my plans usually consist of a large matrix in Word or Excel that displays all of the intended channels by audience, including your purpose of each channel, the cadence you plan on using, your distribution method, even like your review protocol. So, how is that review process going to look like, including those extra layers for legal and compliance that might take a long time. Also, how your channel is accessed and through what devices, if any. I think once you formalize that plan and it's in a good place, then it's time to get into a PowerPoint presentation or even a Prezi and really hone in on the presentation piece and how to get that buy-in and how to get the approval, of that plan.
Coming up on the Internal Comms Procast, a millennial planning superfan shares how she makes time for planning and what sometimes stands in her way.
I think the thing that trips me up is myself, right? I mean, I tend to get in my own way and kind of question, well, this is what I want to know. Is this what other people want to know?
The Internal Comms Procast is sponsored by Circle. Circle provides personalized email, intranet, and app engagement solutions for diverse workforces. Let Circle make your communications job easier. Learn more at cerkl.com. Circle. Weird spelling, awesome engagement. Be a better communicator with a free Internal Comms Pro newsletter. Each week, we deliver a personalized email newsletter full of news, events, and best practices from our collective of trusted internal communications thought leaders. Subscribe at internalcommspro.com/newsletter. Our next planning pro is an HR practitioner and color coding aficionado.
Hi, I am Amy Goodman, and I am the Vice President of Human Resources for Sibsey Klein, and we are a local full-service real estate company in the Cincinnati, Dayton, and Northern Kentucky markets. I got involved with the internal communications community kind of through accident. I think the companies that I've worked in haven't always had, if they've had the national reach of communication, they may not have always had it locally. So I kind of fell into it with trying to increase communication within departments and within the company that I was with. And I think that's how I kind of fell into it. It wasn't something that necessarily came to me as an assignment, but as I would see kind of some missing communication on things, I would jump in and try to help out with that.
No matter where you work, it can be hard to find the time to plan. It seems like every day is filled with endless little fires that can prevent you from finding the time to be strategic and thoughtful about your communication. Amy loves planning, and she thoughtfully designs her days around what she's trying to accomplish. When she's deep in planning mode, she does everything she can to avoid distractions. Here's how she gets in the zone.
For me, it comes down to, and this is going to sound kind of ironic, but it comes down to planning out when you're going to get something done. I am a firm believer in time blocking. Turn off email, turn off your phone, put it on do not disturb, forward your work phone, whatever. Get into a mindset where you're like, I am going to work on this for the next 30, 60, 90 minutes. Nothing is going to distract me. If you work in an office with a door, close the door, go to a huddle room, go to a conference room, whatever it is, and just heads down, say, this is what my game plan is. This is what I'm going to be doing for the next X amount of minutes. And just like I said, just start somewhere. I think that's the only thing that eventually gets me out of my head. If something is not on my calendar, it doesn't happen. So in my mind, if it's on my calendar, I have committed to it and I need to be there and I need to knock it out and get it done. I use my Outlook calendar like it is going out of style. I use my iPhone calendar, and I use it's called Cozy. I use the Cozy app, which is a planning, and I am huge on the notes and reminders list on my phone. I have an iPhone. I use that constantly. I set reminders for myself all the time. And then if you could see my desk right now, and this is the least efficient way to plan, but it works for me because it is so rewarding to not just like cross something off a to-do list, but to physically throw something away and be like, yes, I got that done. I love Post-its. So I have Post-its everywhere. So when I'm like in the middle of something and I don't want to open an app, or if I'm in the middle of planning, or if I'm in the middle of writing, I don't want to stop, open an app, write down what I need to write. I have Post-its there, and I just write a Post-it and I stick it somewhere. And then once I'm out of that, like, this is my 60 minutes, I can only do this, but something pops into my head, I don't want to forget, I can go back to it after that 60 minutes. It's on a Post-it right there. And then I can just start knocking those things out too.
With her time properly blocked, Amy turns her focus to the creation of a content calendar. A content calendar is a shareable resource that teams can use to plan all upcoming employee content. The benefit of using the calendar format, rather than just a long list of content to be published, is that you can visualize how your content is distributed throughout the year. Like Paola, Amy's internal communications plan is focused on the audience. It's not just about the topics, but rather what format and channel her audience would most enjoy. Once you find the right mix, Amy says to stay with it.
So I think that just starting the planning, sitting down, creating a content calendar, knowing who your audience is, was that you need to know your audience. So if you have a lot of different audiences, you need to know, for us internally, does a realtor check out our intranet, or do they check their email, or do they check, would they prefer video? Whereas I'm looking at it from my blog standpoint, I'm going to be putting it on a blog. Do people want a newsletter? Do people eventually want a podcast? And how do I get all of that communication out and to the world and to the company? I'm hearing that more and more from people, my husband especially. He's like, I don't want you to send me books anymore unless I can listen to them. He's like, I don't have time to read a blog. Like, send me a podcast because I can listen to that on my 45-minute drive to and from work. I'm like, I get it. So I think using some sort of analytics tool, anything that you have that can show that analytics to say, okay, we thought, for example, for Sibsy Klein, we thought realtors would use this medium, but really they're not using this or using this, and being agile enough to make that transition as quickly as possible so that you can continue to engage with them and you don't lose them because you've stopped paying attention to podcasting and you've put all your attention into the intranet, but people aren't reading that, or vice versa. I was listening to a podcast recently. It was Lewis Howes on Rachel Hollis's website, Rise. And he was talking about how you have to just, at the start, be really good at the one thing that you're really good at, right? And when you are getting that momentum, like, don't let the foot off the pedal at that point. Like, go all in and keep doing it. If that is what's working, don't try to add 6 other mediums all at once, because then they can all kind of start to fall apart. And I think that's where the agility part comes in, is like, if you look at the data and you're putting all of your effort into your blog or your email communication and it's not getting anywhere, are you open to going to people and asking, like, where would you rather have this? How can we do this? And looking at that. But if everyone is consuming it and it's going gangbusters, keep up with it. He had a really cool story about a gentleman that was approached, ironically, to do a podcast. He had grown his Facebook following to 1 to 2 million followers in, I think, a year, 18 months, something like that. And he was like, oh, I'm thinking about doing this podcast. And the recommendation was to go all in. Like, if people are consuming all of your Facebook content, like, go all in and give them more. I think now he has upwards of 20 million followers. And like, this is the time where now it's started to kind of taper off. And that's when you get into the podcasting realm or the YouTube realm or whatever that is. But kind of knowing where your audience is and making those decisions, I think, will be very important for any communicator, regardless of if it's internal or kind of external communications.
Once you feel good about your content calendar, it's time to share it with your organization's stakeholders, be it the executive team, investors, or employees. In the end, Amy says there's only one big question your plan has to answer.
How this is going to solve a problem. I don't always think that going to someone and saying, oh, this is going to enhance the experience it has always been the answer for me. So when I've been with a company that has launched something that hasn't gone well because we haven't communicated it, it's like, well, if we could do this, this, and this next time, people wouldn't feel surprised. People wouldn't feel like they aren't in the know. They wouldn't log in and see that things have changed. So, for example, we launched Office 365 at our office last year, and I didn't really see a huge difference because I was already on a pretty recent version of Microsoft, and I had Office 365 at my last role. Well, when other people came in to their computer that day, when it launched, we had done some training, but we didn't tell them that the icons, depending on what level you were going from, what year, that some of the icons changed colors. And that was like crazy to some people, because when you get used to something for so long, it's just like anytime Apple or Android or whoever puts out a new update on their phone. I mean, you just have to get used to things. Icons change, things move around, the functionality changes. And I think it can be really challenging, but if you communicate it, and I love what Apple does, it's so basic, right? You get a new update and it says in bullet points, these are the things that are going to be enhanced or fixed. That kind of simple communication to your users is all you need. You don't need this big fluff. You don't need all of these presentations and videos about what's changing. Like, give them the nuts and the bolts and let them get back to their job. Like, people want to, I mean, in my opinion, people want to consume tiny bits of information. If you can tell me that my lock screen isn't going to freeze anymore with this fix, awesome. I'm thrilled to death. This app isn't going to crash because of this. Awesome. I'm thrilled. But if I just get an update, if Apple just sent me an update and was like, just update this, and I'm like, well, what are you doing? Are you putting spyware on my phone and I don't know what I'm agreeing to? That just doesn't feel as good. So just any sort of tidbit of like, hey, FYI, Friday when you leave, it'll be like this. Monday when you come in, it'll be like this. And we're super excited about it. Have a great weekend. Go kill it this weekend. See you on Monday morning.
If you love planning, like Amy does, the next stage, execution, could be the most difficult for you. Amy encourages you to bust past that barrier to get something out to test, even if it's imperfect.
And then I start kind of second guessing it and planning too much. And, like planning is the death of all good ideas, right? So I get into this major planning mode and I plan all these things out. But if I'm not executing it, I think that's just the biggest problem. I think you do not need to have everything perfectly planned out to be able to start executing. You need to start somewhere. And I will not say I'm a great doer in this arena. I'm more of a listen to what I'm saying, don't look at what I'm doing, because I need to remind myself of that constantly, like stop getting into this analysis paralysis and not being able to move forward, but just put something out there, start somewhere and start getting some feedback.
We want to thank Paola and Amy for sharing their thoughts this week. Paola will continue her work with the IABC next year. Learn more about IABC and how it helps communicators of all types at iabc.com. And Amy is preparing to launch her blog. Look for it in early 2019. Next time on the Internal Comms Procast, we are looking to the future. What will the future of internal communications look like? We ask practitioners, consultants, and thought leaders to bring you the 10 trends you should be on the lookout for in 2019.
So I really see that Netflix type experience being brought inside organizations in the not too distant future, and some of those are doing that already.
Internal Comms Procast is produced by Super Awesome Media. Our executive producer is Rachel Foles, Connor Sweeney is our engineer, and Michael Musilli is our digital media specialist. Our theme music is Please Listen Carefully by Jazzer via the Free Music Archive. Show notes and more are available at internalcommspro.com. Follow us on Twitter and Facebook at InternalCommPro. Thank you for listening.